Hello, welcome to the People of Payments podcast. I'm your host, Nathan, founder of Sourcific Talent, and today I'm joined by the incredible Andry Reyes, account executive at the powerhouse that is Yapily for open banking. Andry, great to have you on the podcast. How are things?
Good. Everything good. Thank you for the invitation and for having me, Nathan.
Absolutely, my pleasure. So, look, Andry, I think the best place to start is always to understand your background, right? So I know that Yapily was your first position in payments, but I think you have a unique background, which certainly kind of is extremely interesting. So over to you. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Sure, thank you. So I have nearly 8 years of sales experience now. So my first B2B sales role was in 2016. It was not SaaS, so it was selling exhibition space for a trade event and handling full cycle involving prospecting and also closing my own contract. But I was always intrigued and interested in SaaS. So I decided to join SaaS and start applying. And in 2019, I got an SDR role with a company which serve the hotel industry and tourism. They do a revenue management software. So I stayed there for a year. And I was very successful. I really liked it, but because it was a company serving directly the hotel industry, when 2020 and the pandemic came about, we were directly affected. So I was unfortunately made redundant. After that, I moved to another SDR role in 2020, which I thought, okay, let's look for a more safer industry. And one of the few industries that was actually growing because of the pandemic at the time was digital events. Everything, all of the in-person events got canceled, and trade events, etc. So I actually joined a very, very large, very established company who provided webcasts and digital events. But as soon as they go up, we all noticed that they went down the next year. So I got made redundant again, unfortunately. So after that, that's when I actually took my time and really decided what I wanted to do next. And the main reason why I joined Yapily is because I was looking for a sector where I could actually stay instead of moving industries. I wanted to remain in the sector and develop more subject matter expertise in a particular industry. And then I thought, okay, financial services makes sense. And also I wanted to ideally progress as well into account executive, which was always my goal in my native language, in Spanish. So that's how I then came into Japily and decided to join as an SDR.
Fantastic. And so Yapily was really your first entrance into the payments industry. So we've spoken to a few different people. Some people very much intentionally wanted to move into payment. Some people kind of fell into it, which seems to also be the norm. I mean, from your perspective, you mentioned that you took, very careful decision-making process this time around, having had a couple of redundancies. Was it specifically payments you were targeting, or was it financial services as a whole?
Broadly, it was broader. It was financial services, but that's right. For me, it was a conscious decision. Well, I was not born in the UK, so I'm Cuban. I grew up in Cuba and moved to the UK 10 years ago. So even for me, that's a massive change. I come from a society which is mostly cash based, even up to this day, and financial services that are very, very limited, or in some cases non-existent. So for me, it was a massive change. And also I studied German and English in Cuba and at the university. So I needed to apply that to something. I didn't have another background in an MBA or another industry. So yes, I was always in sales role, but in digital events, then hotel industry, selling trade fair exhibition space. So I decided, okay, I need to stay in a sector and an industry. I need to specialize in applied sales into something and remain there in order to grow. And that's how I decided. And again, like my goal was always like, okay, I want to move into SDR, into a company where I can then move into AE, my native language, serving Spain or Latin America. So it made sense for me to move into financial services. And within that, like Yapily was like a really good choice because we're in the center of so many financial service providers. So we serve accounting companies, lending, crypto, investing, payments, and actually it's funny that this is the people of payments, because I've naturally found that out of all of those sectors, payments is the one that I'm most passionate about. So that's how I came here. But yeah, I actually should have joined the the sector sooner, because it's really exciting.
It's just so fast paced and there's so much innovation
Yes,
going on, right? It's non-stop. But, so your journey at Yapily, you've been there for, just over 2.5 years now, I believe, and, I mean, that's a long time in today's landscape for somebody to remain in the business, because we do see a lot of people that, jump from one place to another to get that progression. But what is it specifically about Yapily that has really been able to keep you invested in the business and to be retainable in that company?
sure. And let's say the situation that yes, 2 years nowadays in a startup, that's considered a long time, but that's a reality. Um, So yes, as I mentioned, because I got moved, laid off twice from my two previous SDRs roles. When I moved to Yapily, before I actually moved to Yapily, I took my time. I said, okay, this is it. I'm not gonna take the next step like carelessly. I really want to take my time and look for the right. I was not looking for a job. I was looking for the right professional step in my career, and I had a lot of sales experience already in prospecting experience and solid SDR experience, but I wanted to move to a company where I could properly grow. So at the time when I joined Yaply, I had already interviewed for like over 5 months in over 30 companies, where I got declined. I also declined roles that I didn't like, and I think it's a two-way street. Like looking for when you look for a job, you look for a job, but when you look for your actual the next step in your career is a two-way street. You're being interviewed and selected as much as you select and choose the place where you want to go to next. And that's
Absolutely.
how I did it at Yapily. And interestingly, I actually set myself like some goals and like another priority. What were the things that I wanted to achieve and get out of my or get in my next role, and Yapily hit all of those marks. But as well, in order to validate and see a bit behind the scenes, what is actually, what the company is actually like, and not being driven by, siren songs. I was really as well like doing my homework and validating a bit more beyond the interview stages. So for example, I was like comparing on G2, Forrester Wave, Gartner Magic Quadrant. I could afford in a way to join a leading company, and that's what I wanted to do. But Yapily was not actually at the time. It was not showing as one of the leaders in the space, but through the interview process and what I like, basically what they were doing and what they had been able to achieve within the time when I interviewed at Yapily compared to other providers, and I mean to other competitors of Yapily, as well as the experience that I have throughout the interview process. Everyone I met with were really competent, were really great people, and you just got the feeling that it was the right company.
Yep.
And that's really what drove me to Yapily. And like it was like looking back, it was a really really good decision. But again, that's what happens when you really take your time and do your diligence and choose that step carefully. Again, it could have gone wrong, but luckily it didn't. And it went well for me, and I've remained here 2.5 years now. My goal was to stay like 5 years in the next company.
Well, amazing, and, look, I think a good friend of mine always used the word "people drives culture and culture drives results," and I think you just mentioned there about, the people you was interviewed by were clearly very competent and build confidence in their abilities, and I think that's always one of those things that, you should certainly look for when you're going to a new position, right? Is who are you going to be working with, because that's gonna be a true telling sign of the opportunity that's there longer term for you, right? Um so that the SDR role, in our opinion, is certainly one of those critical positions to hold. Certainly before progressing into an account executive to really set you up for success. Um, Now, during your time at Yapily, you've clearly seen good professional growth, as well as probably personal growth, as well. Certainly coming into the payments industry. Um, and that growth has seen you go from an SDR into a senior SDR into a lead SDR, and now you've kind of secured that account executive role. Um, I guess how important was that journey for you to have been gone through the ranks as an SDR within a single business before then stepping into an AE role?
Sure. I think, first of all, I think there is a view that the SDR role is a temporary position, or that is a position that you should try and get away from or get out of as quickly as possible. And I think we need to get away more from that in the industry, like view the SDR role as a proper job that actually has a good compensation package, that if you are successful within it, it's got a lot of benefits. And also compared to other jobs that people are doing right now, it's a great job to have. So there doesn't need to be that sense of, oh, I need to rush out of this job quickly. So that's wrong. On the other hand, the SDR can be a really good entry into SaaS companies. So you enter as an SDR, and because naturally what you need to learn is only on the prospecting side and really focusing on the pains and what your company is solving, uh, you can take your time to actually learn things, and then you can progress to account executive or to customer success or to other roles. I've seen that personally, people moving from the SDR role to many other position, even outside of sales. So there doesn't need to be that view that the SDR role is like, it's not important, or it's not, or it's a temporary position. It is not. So in my case, that's how I did it. I actually viewed the SDR role as stepping stone into SaaS, and also stepping stone into progressing my career. I actually, before I joined my first SDR role in 2019, I got an AE role at a different company. But
Okay.
the compensation package was the same. So actually, the AE roles that earn less than SDR roles, the top SDR can earn more than many AEs, and that's a fact. And I decided, well, yes, it can be an AE, but moving into a new company, trying to handle full sales cycle, knowing the product, actually, I'm not sure if this is gonna work out for me. And there is a risk that if I don't do this well, I will be sacked, or I will be laid off from the company. I don't want to take that risk. I prefer certainty and security. So that's how I did it. But again, like the yes, those two SDR roles that I did, I actually got promoted as well to senior within both of them. But after like being successful, being promoted to senior in my two past SDR roles, yes, I got made redundant. So I went back to square one, but I decided all over again to start again through an SDR role and not move to an AE or try to apply externally. People can, like, everyone is the owner of their destiny, right? You can build your life and your career as you wish. I might have chosen an A role earlier than I did, but I decided to stick along and learn more and build. So that's what naturally happened when you put in the effort, and of course, like, you have success in the SDR role. And then within Yapily, yes, I moved to senior, then to SDR manager. Actually, not just a SDR team lead, but SDR manager, managing a team of four. And then last year, the position came about to become an AE for Europe, where I'm actually using now German and Spanish language alongside English. So that's how it all fell into into place.
And and you already said at the start of this conversation that's one of the goals for you to be a account executive where you can use your own languages, right?
Yes.
Rather than just the English language. Um, and so that through that piece, you mentioned that you went into an AE role earlier in your career, and actually then following that role you went back into an SDR position. So what was it? I mean, how did it feel in that transition? Because a lot of people that are listening to this podcast will go turn around and say, well, they just wouldn't even consider doing that because they would say that that's a step back in their career rather than a step forward. Um, so what made you take that decision? Was it the case that you felt that you had rushed into an account executive role too soon? Or was there any other underlying reasons that kind of caused you to go back into an SDR
I
role?
think sometimes it's good to be humble. I see a lot of ego around, like, people. I'm not doing this because I'm too, like, at this level. So, like, I think being humble is good, and also taking your right decisions, depending on what works for you, and not what might seem, or what it might look like. So the role that I had, it was not an account executive; it was an international sales executive role. And it was handling full cycle, but again, it was selling exhibition space for a trade event. So it was not SaaS. SaaS usually pays more than roles that are traditional sales roles or others. So yes, I took a step back, but actually, in terms of compensation, the compensation package was at least 10K higher than what I had as being an SDR, than what I had as an international sales executive. So I actually, in terms of compensation, I didn't take a step back. The other thing, like, yes, I took a step back in terms of control of the sales cycle, but I was very conscious as well. And I'm so happy I did, because I said, well, I can actually focus only on the prospecting side of the sales cycle and improve my skills there and become like really like an expert there, and like go into depth that I wouldn't be able to do as a a full cycle salesperson. And I'm so glad I did, Nathan, because like I've seen many AEs who actually are good at prospecting, but many of them are not, and they're not comfortable. For example, with cold calling, it was in my second SDR role. That's what I really honed my prospecting, my cold calling skills. And actually, it feels like a sport. It's like a muscle that you train, and over time, it's there's like execution is key in cold calling and in general in prospecting. And it's so different how someone gets execution right versus a different person. So it needs to be authentic and unique as well.
Yep.
And the way I actually could convey what I wanted, my message, what I wanted to say to prospects over all channels, but especially in cold calling, when you are under stress, when you're bothering someone and trying to strike the balance of not interrupting their day, but also catch a bit of their time and hopefully attention and interest. That's what I really did when I was like working in high volume as well, doing about 40 to 60 calls a day and getting meetings. And interesting, like got meetings with companies like Porsche in Germany through cold calling, which I never thought I could. And that's the kind of thing that like the SDR role allowed me to do, to really improve those prospecting skills. And even now, though I have parked them, anytime in the future I know that as an AE as well, I can serve self-source. I don't depend on inbound channels. I can go strategically to what I want and build my own pipeline, which is like again a skill that many AEs don't develop well. So in that sense, it was, yes, taking a step back, but then to take three ahead in a better way.
Sounds good. So I guess it's a case of, the outwards in opinions in the market doesn't matter, right? So if somebody sees on your LinkedIn profile that you mentioned, I think was it senior sales executive, and then you've gone to an SDR role instead of into another account executive style position, it doesn't matter what external factors or external people think of that journey, right? Because we've clearly demonstrated now that actually it was an increase in salary, and there was that step forward to move into SaaS, and that led to many more steps forward on your journey, which has ultimately got you to where you are
And I
today,
think
right?
ultimately,
So
like, it's wrong by just like someone that look at my LinkedIn profile and makes a decision based on that without even knowing what it is. That's wrong, because you shouldn't judge
absolutely,
books by their covers. You should always like try to understand that reality, and reality sometimes cannot be seen at a glimpse. You need to understand really what's happening. And in this case, like, I've always been able to evidence that and to evidence, okay, this is that reality. This is what I gone through, this is what I've done, and this is my experience, and how can I apply to this role, or am I a good candidate enough for this position or another? And it has served me.
yeah,
But yeah, so that's ultimately. Sorry, I lost the thread there, but
that's right. Nice. Ultimately, yeah, during your time, I'm sure you would have had to overcome various different hurdles, various different challenges. Um, So when you look back over your journey, what would you say has been one of the bigger challenges you've had to overcome, and what lessons have you learned from doing that?
so I think the main challenge was like the fact that I, in my previous two SDR roles, that I was successful. I really was like hitting my targets, becoming a senior. Like I actually led the team in terms of performance. I was the top performer in my two previous SDR roles, in terms of outbound meetings and opportunities generated. So after you've done that, being laid off and going back to square one, that's a massive challenge. And I think you're right. There is a bottleneck right now for in the SDR role, and that's the sad reality. There is simply not enough opportunity for all of the deserving SDRs that are there in the market right now or are in their jobs right now. and that are also that are being successful. So the way for me and to overcome how I overcame it, like I needed to again like go again to a new company, and I apply. I always moved as an SDR. I've known people who have moved as an AE externally, so from an SDR role in a company to an AE role in a different company, and that has worked out for them, and it's good. But again, each one can take their decisions, right? In my case, yes, that's what I realized, that you need to be actually at 120, 150% of your game. You cannot be at
Yeah.
simply 100%. You need to be at the top of your game so that when opportunities come, then you are naturally there, right? They're yours. Um, because we all have our own goals. Okay, I want progression, I want the SDR role, and I want to get this. But companies as well, they have their own goals, and they startups, they're like a ship, right? That they go through the ocean, but they can encounter storms or whatever, and things sometimes don't go to plan. So there's
Yep.
that, like, where those things sometimes don't meet, like your own goals and the company goals. Sometimes it can go wrong. In this example, I joined Yapily because I wanted to become a Spanish speaking AE, or I wanted to become an AE in my native language in Spanish. But actually, what happened is that the company had to scale back operations in Europe, and Spain completely got reduced from the company at the time, and that position was no longer available. So to summarize it, I think you need to be flexible. You need to be able to adapt your skill set to whatever opportunities are there in the company. At Yapily, I, for example, became SDR manager, which was not my initial goal. I always wanted AE.
Yep.
And at the same time, you need to be really, really on top of your game in order to earn those promotions and opportunities when they come.
Yeah. Okay. So adapt and overcome, basically, right? So it's all about the mindset and kind of being aware that you may have a goal. Might have a what I call a golden thread of where you want to get to, but that needs to also be aligned with the company you're working for. And so, how do you do that? That's possibly going to set out different branches that you have to kind of go down. As you mentioned, the plan wasn't to necessarily become an SDR manager, but actually go into an AE role. Um, having to adapt so quickly to those changes, I think, is something that many people have to get used to, especially within the kind of startup and the fast-paced agile environments such as Japily. Um, but I guess in terms of how you was able to adapt to those changes, did you see benefits in terms of going into that SDR manager role before the account executive position, or do you feel that actually it was more okay, we have to do this to get there. So it's more that stepping stone of having to do it rather than seeing a lot of benefit from doing
For
it.
sure, there was a lot of benefit. Again, it was not my plan, but the opportunity came about, and I was like, okay, this is there. Should I take it or not? I decided, yes, I will take it. It's challenging because as well, it was a hybrid SDR manager role. So I was the SDR manager, but I retained individual contributor responsibility. So I had the same targets as every other SDR. So I needed to manage while also being an SDR. But that was also what I chose, because I said, okay, I don't want to fully step out of the SDR role and then tell people what to do, but I'm sitting there and not doing it. I want to show them how to do. I want to be there, like, on the front lines with them and working. So that for me, even though it was challenging in a way, it made it easier because I was leading by example and showing people as well, like in my own experience and way of doing things. Um, uh, but I definitely learned a lot of things in terms of project management, managing people, how to get into people's mindsets, which you do
Yeah.
anyway in sales, but in a management, from a management perspective. And yes, and how to like not being a single contributor, but also like leading a team and making sure that everyone contributes. That was
Yeah.
a very good experience for me, and I might come back to it in the future. So right now I'm an AE, and I want to return here for more years, but in the future, I don't know, in the next 7 to 10 years, I might want to go back to sales leadership again. So in this sense, like the SDR manager position was very, very useful.
Fantastic. Awesome. Nice. Okay. And So when we look into Yapily themselves, right? So they've made an amazing name for themselves as a business. And there's an account executive. I'm sure you're on the front line to this question many times. But with the numerous open banking businesses that are launching all across the world right now, it's such a hot space for people to kind of launch a business in. What is it about Yapily that really kind of sets them apart from the competitors, in your opinion?
Sure. So typically, so open banking means that basically banks, through regulation, how at least how it happened in the UK and the EU, they were forced to open the bank accounts from both retail and corporate customers to third parties to initiate payments or access data directly from the bank accounts, right? Uh, However, how that was done and what was done with it, it has been different. So many open banking companies chose to not only connect those bank accounts and to initiate payments and access data, but also to build products based on those, build a checkout product and then a risk engine or whatever that might be a payment or data product on top of open banking connections. Yapile, however, took a positioning as an infrastructure provider only, meaning that we don't operate in the application or front end layer at all. We operate on the connections to bank on the infrastructure layer, and also on the tooling, so additional tools that are needed in order to make the most out of those connections and to effectively handle and make those connections work. And precisely because we have, instead of trying to cover everything, we have narrowed our focus to infrastructure and tooling only. It has allowed us to actually grow more and offer one of the largest coverages or largest coverage of any open banking provider in Europe, and also ensure the reliability and quality and performance of those APIs, because the way the banks expose their APIs throughout Europe was very different. They follow different technical standards. There is a lot of complexity, not only to integrate, but also to maintain and ensure, ongoing performance on those APIs. So that's really what make Yapily a leader within the space. That strategic positioning, which at the beginning I didn't understand enough. Like, okay, why infrastructure only? Why? But that's really Yapily. So we focus on that, and then like our typical customers are PSPs, lenders, accounting companies, anyone who is building or improving their services, the payment and data services based on open banking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think because on that basis, you're kind of behind the scenes of this, right? And I've certainly seen Yapily crop up. If even if I wasn't in the payments industry, I would have heard of Yapily because, if you apply for a credit agreement, it would out of 10 come up saying, we'd like to do a credit check on you, and we use Yapily open banking to do this. Give consent, and so even people that aren't in the payments industry would have most likely come across Yapily. But at the same time, it does take a lot more to build awareness for a business that isn't kind of active on the front end side of things as well. So how have you adapted as an account executive with needing to build that awareness in the market, for the
Well, the awareness is there because there is a one thing, which is the final consumer, which is what you were mentioning, that they are the ones that would see or not the Apple's name, but they are not our target. So the final consumer, because we're not
yeah.
in the application layer, the final consumer, be it B2B or B2C, they are not our target. So we don't need to be shown in the picture. Our target is the intermediaries, the financial service providers, be it PSPs, accounting firms, lending firms, crypto, prop tech, like a lot of financial service providers. And we are already well known. And also we can prove, because precisely because we don't want to be shown in the picture, precisely because we're happy or we want to remain invisible in the background. We want them to take center stage, and we want them to handle the relationship with their customers without showing Japanese name there. We don't care. We don't want to. We are here to serve our customers and for them to then provide a better services to their end consumers, and not to show Japanese brand. And it doesn't affect us because like we just need awareness in that middle bit, the intermediaries, and we are known already. And there's a lot of talking with one another. So That's in that case, that's actually a provider like Yapily is better than the one that is shown in the picture and that can ultimately be used by the final consumer.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Makes sense. Okay. And as we dive further into open banking, we see, as I mentioned earlier, it's ever evolving. There's so much change. It's generally rapid. So, what do you think has been the kind of main driving force behind the need for such rapid innovation within this industry?
Sure. I think the main need in open banking came hand in hand with the GDPR regulations. So they both came out at the same time. And whilst GDPR said that our data belongs to us, and then companies cannot process and retain and store and then sell our data as they wish, we have the right over that. Open banking followed the same principle. So it was that our bank accounts are ours, and we have the right to initiate a payment or access the data from our bank accounts anytime. So based on that as well, it's the same principle. It's actually democratizing financial services, increasing competition, which benefits the consumers at the end of the day, and kind of like getting away with monopolies. That when there's a monopoly, then like that they are with card networks, they increase the prices and they can charge as much as they want because they know that they control the economy in the sense or the industry. Open banking has, yes, that's one of the main drivers. Actually, the need for increased competition in order to reduce costs, to make payments yes cheaper for processing payments for merchants or for yes, like not the consumers. They're not paying like fees usually, but the businesses are in order to just simply
Yeah.
receive a digital payment. So that's one. Also the experience. There are still many challenges with the existing payment methods like cards, like bucks, like direct debit, etc. So recently, for example, I was doing an international transfer by with Remitly, and I was paying by card, and my card payment, because it was a large amount, it got declined twice. And interestingly, the way for me to actually do the payment was by open banking, sadly with a provider like competitor of Yapily, not with Yapily, but still it's good. It's a point that actually I could not make that payment by card because the card algorithms were blocking the payment because they thought it was a fraud, or they didn't have any way to verify it was me. With open banking, because I'm paying directly with my bank account and authenticating that payment with my bank's security protocols, then the bank knows, yes, it's me for sure, and the payment went through. Or anytime, for example, if you have Revolut or Monzo, if you are topping up, sending money from your bank, or you receive your salary to your Monzo or Revolut account, you're actually using open banking for that. So that need to actually externalize payments from your bank account and to increase the use cases that you can enable for both for payments and for data with open banking has been one of the main drivers behind open banking.
Fantastic. It's great to hear. Well, look, I don't see it having any signs of slowing down. I'm sure there's a huge amount more to come from various different businesses in this space. But no, I've been asking everybody I'm speaking to their predictions for the next 12 months, with an aim to revisit this in the future, and we can see kind of how close you were to getting it getting it spot on. But I guess from your opinion, what do you see happening in the next 12 months that's really going to be a big focus within the payments industry?
Well, 12 months in terms of payments is actually not a long time. It's only 1 year, but we do see a lot happening in the next year. So in terms of payments, if we actually move that I mean, in terms of payment, I think like digitalization will continue. So digital payments are here to stay. I don't think cash will completely go away, but payments are going to continue. Like digital channels are going to continue to be the prevalent one of the prevalent channels, or the prevalent channel. And with that as well, embedded payments and contextual payments. So offering payments outside of yes, in the value chain or whatever the value chain might be. um I think open banking will still continue to, like, there is, especially outside of the UK, in Europe, there is still like a lot more to be done in terms of open banking, and especially in terms of payments. But there are already three regulations that are actually coming to force next year. So first one is the EU instant payments regulation, which actually will enable a lot of cases. I mean, it will make basically payments, SEPA payments, free and instant. Like by mandate. Like all of the banks need to comply with that. So that will enable a lot of use cases, payment use cases by open banking, for example, at a point of sale. But also the PSD2 is going to be replaced by the PSR1 and by the PSD3.
Yeah.
So that would actually take the next step that open banking needs in terms of ensuring more uniformity, and not just saying that you need to open your APIs, but also detailing what does that mean from a technical perspective and what banks actually need to provide in order for those APIs to work. And the PSD3 as well will take open banking more into the open finance um, space, which is like just simply going beyond your banking data into other sources of data. So for next year, definitely is going to be an exciting year. I've been to in half years at Yapily, and a lot has happened. But I think hopefully from next year we'll see a lot more maturity and the adoption hopefully growing a lot more in Europe.
And certainly within the markets you're working in, right? It's you're going to have a busy year ahead for sure. And it's December of this year, isn't it, that the Euro banks need to start to reform to those changes, right?
So say again.
It's December this year that the Euro banks need to start to kind of input those new
They will have
regulatory changes, right?
there is. Yes, actually, I'm not sure on the date, but they will have 6 months in order to allow that, and then like another 12 months in order to for those instant payment to be ready, like start
Yeah.
working. So there will be, of course, a phase, and there's also the question: are the banks ready for that? There's a lot of like questions like, would that work? Is that too soon? That's why it would be exciting to see how it actually plays out. um, because yes, regulation is like it's been imposed and banks need to comply, but also there is as well in terms of payments, because up to now open banking has been driven by banks, by in the UK and Europe, by regulation, and the banks have just had to comply with that and didn't get anything from it. But now there's also a single payment access scheme, SPA scheme, in Europe, which is trying to incentivize the bank as well and offering premium
Yeah.
APIs where they can charge for the usage of them, but then as well the banks benefit, as well as the open banking and the final consumers benefit from better APIs that can be paid for.
Amazing. Well, look, lots going on in the space, and they're really good to talk to you as always. And we look forward to continuing to follow your journey at Yapily and the success you've had so far. Um, Look, I think we are going to be setting up a panel interview very soon. So no doubt I'll probably be coming back to you to have conversations around that. And in the meantime, best of luck with the continued success of Yapily, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for the invitation, Nathan.